Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Hi, Confidence. Before we start, I just want to play a promo from one of my favourite podcasts, Canadian True Crime. I discovered this podcast when I was flying and I just binged the whole thing. I absolutely love it. I've listened to every episode and I cannot recommend it highly enough. Christy is an amazing host. She's an Aussie gal just like me, and I'm really proud to be able to do a promo swap with her. Check it out.
Canada may be known as the friendliest country in the world, but make no mistake, it has some of the most shocking criminal cases too. My name is Christy and I host Canadian True Crime. I'm Australian, but I've been living in Canada for many years. Canadian True Crime takes a deep dive into some of Canada's most well-known cases, like the Ken and Barbie killers, Robert Pickton the pig farmer, and many smaller cases you probably haven't heard of, but are just as fascinating. If you're looking for the facts of the case told in a narrative storytelling format with ambient music, you can find me on your favourite podcast app or social media, just by searching for Canadian True Crime.
Welcome to Hong Kong Confidential. I'm Jules Hannaford and I'm your host. I'm an Australian woman and I've been living in Hong Kong for many years. I'm a mother, a teacher, an author, and I want to share my wisdom and the wisdom of others with you. Thanks for joining me and I hope you enjoy the show. Today I'm here with Joanna Bowers, the director of The Helper. Thank you for meeting me today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a bit sweaty and warm, but otherwise I'm very well, thank you.
Oh, great. Joanna, tell me a bit about yourself. How did you end up in Hong Kong?
Quite a long way around. I'm originally from the UK. I was born and raised in Kent, and then a little quick stint in Dubai. And then from there, I lived in Los Angeles for 11 years. And then from there, I came to Hong Kong, which has been sort of 6, nearly coming up for 7 years next year.
Oh, wow. How cool. So you're a globetrotter. That's
amazing. Or the littlest hobo. You could.
I like that a lot. You've worked in the US in the film industry. What was it like and what did you do?
I went to school for broadcast journalism in the UK, University of Leeds, which was sort of run in conjunction with the BBC. So it was a great place to go to school. It was great training. But I knew when I graduated that there were so few jobs in film and television in England. And I'd travelled around the States after my first year at uni, backpacked around with an Amtrak pass and then ended up in Los Angeles and met people there and just had my eyes open to how many television channels there were, how many movies were made every year. And I sort of thought to myself, well, this and the continuous sunshine make a lot more sense to be somewhere that I should end up eventually. So when I graduated, I got myself an internship visa, which allowed me to go study in the US for up to 18 months. And so the company that helped facilitate the visa, there were 2 options in Los Angeles. Had to be related to your degree program. So it was like the media and entertainment section. And there were 2 options. I could either be an intern in the BAFTA office in Los Angeles, which obviously would have been quite glamorous, but it seemed like it was going to be a lot of photocopying and filing. Or the other option was to go and train horses on a ranch to be in the movies.
Oh, how cool. So you chose the horses, obviously.
I obviously chose the horses. And I was like a cowgirl living on a ranch.
Oh my gosh.
Outside of Los Angeles. That was my first job. And then I moved on to working as an assistant for a writer. She was a TV writer and she did some children's books. Then from there, I started working for TV commercial directors, initially as their assistant, and then I got trained up and was sort of production coordinating and stuff like that. From there, I ended up sort of doing a bit of development work in television, and then I ended up as a casting director for a while.
No way, did you?
It was amazing. It was the best job.
Did you meet some super famous celebrities in the US?
Yeah, probably.
You didn't know who they were?
No, this is my problem. I'm actually generally useless. If I ever meet anybody, my most embarrassing but most often repeated line is like, did you go to university in Leeds? Like, I've asked so many people that and have them just look at me blankly.
When they're actually, you know them from television or film.
Totally.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and so then from being a casting director, that's sort of how I fell into directing. My best friend, sadly, her mum passed away from cancer. And she and her two sisters travelled over to Ireland to scatter the ashes because her mum had lived there when she was younger. And when she came back and told me this story, it was sort of sweet and funny and a bit dark. And she's a great writer. So I said, well, why not write that as a short film? So she did. And then we raised the money to make the film. Her mum had been a very prominent divorce lawyer. So we lent on some of the partners at her law firm to finance.
Got them a bit drunk and then got them to sign on the dotted line. Brilliant.
I was producing, and then when we were ready to go, I said to my friend, who do you think should direct this film? And she said, I think you should. And I was like, what? We actually met in a theatre company together in Los Angeles. I've always sort of, loved all different aspects of production. And I had that sort of moment where I went, hold on a minute, I've done most of the jobs in the different departments. I understand how a production comes together. I've got some really great, talented friends that I can bring on board to sort of back up any of my shortcomings. And so I said yes. And after my first day on set directing, I was just like, oh, this is it. No,
you loved it.
I loved it. I was like, I found the right thing because it brought together all of my different skill sets. And it's all about sort of managing a team of people, surrounding yourself with brilliant people, and then just having a really sort of specific creative vision.
That's so true, isn't it? That's amazing. It actually reminds me when I was a teacher in Adelaide in Australia, they had these Day with the State programs where a school would get selected to go along and do just a section of a theatre performance that was on at the State Theatre Company, but with professional actors. And I got to direct that. And I remember doing it and thinking, this is what I want to do. Absolutely brilliant. I'm still in teaching, but anyway, never mind. But I understand that adrenaline, that feeling of everyone coming together, seeing your vision come to life. It's an incredible feeling, isn't it?
It's really lovely, yeah. It was almost like a drug to me. After that first experience of it, I was like, oh, okay, I know people make a living doing this. How do I get there? How do I do that? And I managed to start sort of picking up some small directing jobs as growing and growing.
Was that still in the US?
That was still in Los Angeles at that time, yeah. And then, so that was sort of 2008, I think, was when I started. And then by about 2010, 2 years later, I got a few projects under my belt, but sort of the knock-on effects of the financial crisis hit the entertainment industry in Los Angeles. And suddenly the jobs for the littlest, newest, least experienced director had all dried up because the big jobs had dried up and people up the food chain were taking those smaller jobs. And so I got into this thing where I was like, oh my God, I found this thing. I love doing it. This is what I want to do. But my work had just pretty much disappeared. So I went back to England for the summer. My brother was getting married. I went and sort of sulked at mum and dad's house for a little while. And then a friend was moving out to Hong Kong. So I sort of came out to see Hong Kong to help him find a flat and stuff like that. And randomly, an American Chamber of Commerce drinks met the head of a massive apparel manufacturing company who complimented my shoes, and I was slightly cheeky back. And he said, oh yeah, you think you know everything about the fashion industry, do you? And I said, hi mate. And he ended up being the head of this apparel manufacturing company and said, when I told him actually what I did do, he said, oh, are you cheaper than my Madison Avenue agency? I said, yes, rather.
Brilliant.
So they hired me initially to shoot their sustainability sort of content. So telling stories of their sustainability projects throughout Asia. And so my company, my brand new company that I just set up, Cheeky Monkey Productions, became the agency for Asia for this big company.
Oh, how cool. You really just created a company on the back of being asked to do this job. Brilliant. How did you get your team? Because you're in Hong Kong.
I just had to sort of figure that out as I went, essentially. Started working on little projects, sort of got to know people within the community. And then as I got more and more confident with my team and had a bigger group, then I sort of knew that I could start scaling up to bigger and bigger projects.
Oh, fantastic. After you did that work for the apparel company, where did you head then with your Cheeky Monkey company?
Then I did some work for HSBC. I did some work for Christie's, some of the sort of Hong Kong big corporates. I did some work for Cathay Pacific. I shot a film for the launch of their new livery a couple of years ago. And then I got asked through a friend to go to Nepal to film some content for a Hong Kong-based charity called CWS Hong Kong.
Oh, yeah, which I know.
Yeah.
They do Lama Fun Day. So
exactly.
We raise money for that charity every year on Lama.
Yes.
It started 15, 16 years ago. and we maybe raised 10,000 and now we raise 250,000 or something like that every year.
Well, when my friend who worked for them told me about their work, I thought it sounded amazing. And she said, hey, would you consider going to Nepal to actually bring some of our stories to light? We can tell our donors, what it is that we do and we can show them still images, but nothing's as powerful as being able to actually interview the people that the funding has impacted and affected.
How cool. So how did you do that? Like, did you take a team? Did you have to just wing it when you got there? Did you pre-prepare sort of questions and know who you were going to meet?
Kind of, sort of. The CWS were really well prepared. And so it was me, my cinematographer, my friend who worked for the nonprofit, and then a still photographer came with us. And we just had the most amazing trip.
It was incredible. What did you love about it the most?
Everything. Nepal is one of my favorite places on the planet. It's a beautiful country, first of all, and then the people are absolutely lovely. And it's so colourful and vibrant for somewhere that isn't particularly wealthy compared to a lot of other places in Asia. It's everywhere that you go is just beautiful and eye-catching, which obviously was a great place to over there sort of shooting filmed content. They've introduced us to 3 women who had been impacted by different projects that they run. And as we got to know them, we kind of shaped these films around them.
Oh, cool. So how were they positively impacted by CWS?
One of them was a survivor of a sexual trafficking attempt, and she had gone on to set up her own shelter for victims of trafficking.
Brilliant.
So through the funding through CWS Hong Kong. So she was saving many, many young women and girls every year, which was incredible. Another was a young woman who had gone through a hotel training program. She and her family worked in the sand mines, and we went and we filmed there, and it was bleak, hard, back-breaking work. And she had been through this program that CWS sponsors, that's a hotel training program, and hotel management, or I think front of house skills, had since gotten a job with the Movenpick hotels in the Middle East and gone on to begin her career in hospitality, which was a game changer. We saw the extra bedroom that her money had been able to build. We saw the inside toilet that her money was able to build. And it was really, really powerful. And then the third story was a woman in a little mountain village, a sort of 6-hour drive from the nearest town. And her husband was a migrant worker who had gone off to Saudi Arabia and basically disappeared.
Oh, no.
And so the poor woman was a single mum of 2 kids, really struggling to survive. And CWS had brought her in as kind of like one of the dinner ladies in the village school that they had built and that they fund. In addition to kind of giving her son an education, they'd also brought her in to give her a job, to give her a stable income to help support her family.
Oh, wow, that sounds incredible. How moving. Was this the first time you'd worked with more disadvantaged women?
Yeah, absolutely.
And did that inspire you to then move on to be doing what you've done recently with The Helper?
Yeah, completely. Having that experience and seeing that we were able to tell those stories and that they were impactful sort of finally gave me the confidence and I think the professional mindset to go on and to tackle the Helper documentary, which was an idea that I'd had in my brain from sort of the first minute I set foot in Hong Kong.
Oh, really? Why?
Well, that Sunday, it's a common thing for new arrivals in Hong Kong, that Sunday that you first spend in either Causeway Bay or in Central and you see the many, many thousands of women. It's an arresting visual and it absolutely sparked my curiosity from day one.
For our listeners out there who don't live in Hong Kong, what happens is Sunday is the only day off for the helpers in Hong Kong and they all gather around in walkways and parks and all around Causeway Bay and Hong Kong and Central and they sit and they braid hair and do their nails and they bring food and that's their day off and they all get together because I guess many of them aren't with their families, so they come together.
They do, I think, what anyone else would do in the comfort and privacy of their own home and their own private personal space.
It's
for
true.
So many of them, they don't have that.
It's true. So then did you start asking questions? Did you get to know helpers? Where did you go from there once that sort of visual image of the first day, Sunday in Hong Kong sparked your interest?
Yeah, over the years, I got to know friends who already had children, who had helpers as part of their families, cleaner, like just grew and grew and grew until I ended up actually hiring my own first helper, Janai, who her mum was a friend of mine's domestic helper. And Janai had recently graduated from university in the Philippines with her bachelor's degree in psychology and nursing and had come to Hong Kong to work as a domestic helper to be able to save up money to go back home and do her master's degree. Because unfair situation is that for many educated, qualified women in the Philippines, unfortunately, what they can earn as a salary with just a regular bachelor's degree is less than what they earn as a migrant domestic worker here in Hong Kong.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, you get qualified accountants, engineers, women who've worked in banks, teachers. It's just pretty upsetting that the best option is to work in Hong Kong, because it's a similar way to every mum all over the world. We're all looking to provide the best possible future and opportunities for our children. And that's, I guess, their best option.
It is, isn't it? And in the Filipino culture, they send a lot of money home to their parents and their families, and quite often they don't have their children here with them, and they're being looked after by other family members as well.
Yeah, it's lovely that they've got the extended family, which does enable them to have a certain level of peace of mind being away from their children. But that financial pressure from that extended family is immense. It's such a culturally different thing from what we have in the West. But it just means that rather than achieving financial independence at a relatively young age, for the majority of these women's lives, they just can't seem to satisfy their financial goals because there's always a family member with a crisis or a medical emergency, or someone's schooling needs to be paid for. It's never ending, and not many of them have the ability or want to say no.
And also many of them get then caught up with loan sharks in Hong Kong, and they take out loans and they have ridiculous interest. They can't pay it back, and it becomes a massive emotional and financial burden. It's really sad.
Yeah, it's awful. They're really preyed upon and targeted specifically, I think, because these loan sharks use the emotional angle. I mean, it's really, really common for domestic helpers in Hong Kong to have a friend or a family member take them out for a nice lunch and say, by the way, can you co-sign on a loan for me? And people don't want to be seen as rude by saying no. So oftentimes they'll agree to co-sign on this loan. They'll go to the loan office, sign a piece of paper that they don't know what it is. They don't even get a copy oftentimes. And then not realizing that if the initial loan guarantor skips town or disappears,
they're liable.
They're liable.
Oh, see, I didn't know that either, that they were guaranteeing their friends and families loans.
I've been doing a bunch of work recently with Enrich, who are one of the beneficiaries of the film and one of the non-profits in Hong Kong that we profile in the film. Lisa Avellino went through their training, and I've learned so much about sort of the financial scams and pressures and the pyramid schemes.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're incredibly lucky that's not so much a part of our culture. I'm English. Gosh, talking about money, let alone asking to borrow money from someone else, would just be an absolute no-no. Leveling like a family member asking me for. Like, it just wouldn't happen where I come from. It's why we struggle to understand this completely different mindset.
It is completely different, isn't it? And it's a whole different world here in Hong Kong, where there's such a vast difference in the wealth and the poverty that people face.
Yeah, it's brutal. I mean, It is. I've never seen so many Rolls Royces in my entire life since I've lived in Hong Kong. And that's saying something because I lived near Beverly Hills before.
Exactly. I know there's so much money at the top end here.
Yeah. Whereas certainly domestic helpers have been, I think for a long time now, this sort of invisible underclass in Hong Kong, very much taken for granted and not really thought about.
Having your film, The Helper, really does open people's eyes, and I think it can make them realise that these people are human, they deserve rights, that they shouldn't be sleeping on the floor in a kitchen, and there's some people that sadly treated terribly. What was your experience making the film with different ways that the women are living in Hong Kong and surviving?
Very mixed, very, very mixed. I mean, most of the ladies that we got to know through the Unsung Heroes choir are actually doing really well. They're sort of at the upper end of success. They're helpers that are in such a stable, sort of positive place that they're able to have a hobby. They're able to regularly commit to doing something on their day off. So that's awesome. So most of those ladies are the best possible situation. Same with Lisa Avellino. Her family that she works with are really, really supportive to her. Then Nurul, the Indonesian domestic helper who's profiled in the film, her story was awful. She was falsely accused of stealing something, fired, given misinformation by the police who told her she didn't need to renew her visa. And there was just sort of no safety net for her.
No backup support.
It's pretty brutal that when their employment contract finishes, they've got 2 weeks to get out of the country, which that's a tricky one as well. If they've got a complaint to file, if they haven't been treated well or haven't been paid or something, it's pretty impossible to be able to pursue a claim against anyone. Or
2 weeks, got to pack up, get out.
The other option is to stay in a shelter, but then you're not earning anything.
How can you survive? There's no government support.
And the whole point of being here is to earn the money to send to the family at home.
It's a no-win situation.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty brutal.
What was your goal in making the film? What were you hoping to achieve?
To basically put these women in the spotlight, to put the domestic workers in the spotlight. There'd been a lot of other content out there that was highlighting how awful employers could be or the injustices of government or whatever. But it was never really sort of shining the light on these women on what their potential was as women, as humans, like what their hopes and dreams and how they were going after that. And I thought that that would probably be the most powerful way to try and create a shift in perception, to try and humanize them and have people look at them differently.
What impact has the film had? Can you tangibly tell what impact it's had on employers or the women?
We've had so much incredible feedback. Every other day, there's an email or a WhatsApp or a Facebook message or whatever saying, oh my goodness, the film was wonderful. I had no idea. I look at the woman on the bus next to me very differently now. From the helper's perspective, Lisa Avellino's gone on to have some great speaking opportunities. She's taught at TEDx Women. She's going on to speak to women in leadership conferences like speakers bureaus at Hong Kong big banks like State Street, to bringing her in as a guest.
That's brilliant.
And as a role model. So that's really wonderful.
And the unsung heroes are going from strength to strength. That's episode 10 for the listeners out there. I interviewed Jane. Yeah, that was a great interview. And they sound amazing.
So they actually did just sing at the Hong Kong Sevens this year.
I saw the video. It was amazing.
So that was one of their dreams. Next year, I think they're well on the way to be on the field with, as Jane says, 1,000 voices on the grass at half time.
Wouldn't that be brilliant? Jane will do that too.
Oh, she will.
It's amazing.
Yeah, like, you know, she's got a great team around her and the choir are amazing. So they're going from strength to strength. Joy Carbonell, who's the lead singer of the choir, she's actually been offered a job as a music teacher.
Oh, she has. Well, that was mentioned, but I'm not sure if it's possible, is it?
Well, so this is the thing. This is what's tricky. So the company who've offered her the job had advertised in Hong Kong, and there were no local applicants who submitted who were qualified in the same way that Joy is qualified. So they've offered Joy the position, but now they're having to jump through some visa hoops.
Yes.
Because
domestic helpers cannot be employed in any other way after they've been employed as a domestic helper, apparently.
Allegedly, yeah.
That's what I believe.
Let's see. I mean,
fingers crossed for her.
She's back in the Philippines right now, literally just waiting to see what the verdict
comes together.
We've got everything crossed. I mean, it would be amazing. If she gets that visa, she'll set a precedent that you're not just a domestic helper. You don't need to be limited.
And that laws will have to change. Wouldn't that be great? Yeah. That would be amazing.
Yeah. And then also, I mean, in terms of, we're about to commission a proper impact report to actually quantify really what our reach has been, the emotional response and impact. But we're also, Thanks a Million campaign on Facebook is growing and growing, and that's lovely. And then we've also been approached by an organization from the US called Global Citizen, and they want to partner with us on a campaign to get the ILO Convention C189 on domestic workers ratified at the upcoming ASEAN Summit in Singapore in October.
Wow, congratulations. That's incredible. Oh my gosh, I've just been showing my students that Global Citizen website. Yeah. We've just been looking at it. They're amazing, that group.
I know. So one of the founders, Wei Su, he approached me a few months ago and said, look, we've been looking to do something in this space. We think this is a really important issue. And then we started digging in to see what media was out there, and we found your film. And it just looks like a perfect fit because we've got this international distribution coming up for the film. They want to use the film to educate people about the issues facing migrant domestic workers in countries throughout Asia, so that then they can motivate them to take action and to speak up to the leaders within their individual countries.
That's brilliant. Wow. Congratulations. You're soaring. You're soaring. I mean, that's amazing.
The dream impact of this, which I don't think we ever even dared dream of when we started the film, that we would be able to literally legally make life better for domestic workers, which if the ILO convention was ratified in countries, it would then suddenly make provisions for them to have one day off a week, which they don't have in some places.
Yeah.
You know, maximum working hours.
Increased wages.
Yeah, just stuff like that.
Their own bedrooms.
Basic human rights.
Yes, basic human rights. Oh, that's fantastic. I'm so proud of you. That's amazing. How brilliant, Joanna.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Fab. So what has all this taught you about yourself?
Ooh, that once I get an idea going, there's no stopping me. Yeah. But also, again, the power of teamwork. Because this film wouldn't have been made if it hadn't been for there's so many people, particularly women, reaching out to me that I didn't know before we went down the path of making the film, offering their services, their skills, volunteering their time, their energy to support it.
Oh, that's really cool, isn't it? I mean, there's a great community here in Hong Kong of people really willing to get on board and help and make a difference. It's really nice.
And that's been amazing. Even, other fellow filmmakers, we've got international distribution coming up. We'll be on iTunes and other pay-per-view platforms and Cathay Pacific.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. That's brilliant.
And that's beginning July 24th.
Because it just started out with a local release, didn't it, in Hong Kong?
Well, it's actually...
And it's just been growing.
A year ago last Sunday, which was Mother's Day, was when we had our Hong Kong premiere at the Asia Society. And then it was October when we had our theatrical release at AMC Cinemas. And that was brilliant. We thought we were going to get like 3 or 5 days, and we ended up selling out nearly sort of 12 weeks of screenings.
Oh, I didn't realise that. Congratulations.
Yeah. We went from October to December.
That's brilliant.
It was lovely. And it was overwhelming. We always hoped that the film would find an audience, but just never realised it would be quite so broad, including so many domestic workers themselves. Like, they were thrilled to bits that they were the heroes, that they were up on the big screen.
I bet they were. That's so great, isn't it? Do you have any stories of changing people's lives because of this film? I mean, I know you've talked about these women who have gone on to amazing things, but what about the grassroots?
In terms of the domestic helpers, we did a screening last week in Discovery Bay, and some of the ladies featured in the film were just talking about how they felt like, even within the community, the small community of Discovery Bay, were elevated. Their status was somewhat elevated in society, that they were respected and recognised.
They were feeling that.
Yeah, they were.
Isn't that nice?
And they were feeling empowered. Like, it was really lovely. One of them, Malou, who's in the choir, was saying, we're running a first aid program for helpers. So anyone who wants to sign their helpers up, let's do that. And really assuming sort of visible leadership roles within the community rather than being the hidden underclass.
Oh, that's really fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, you must feel super proud.
I am. I'm psyched.
I imagine it's getting bigger and going faster than you even imagined it would, which is really nice.
We'll see. I mean, we've got this international release coming up in July and their partnership with Global Citizen. It'll be interesting to see. At the moment, we've got press sort of lining up from Elle magazine in France.
I know, that's brilliant. Congratulations.
Marie Claire in America.
Thanks for coming to talk to the little old me.
Oh my gosh, please. Thank you for having me. Awesome. But it's all sort of women empowering women angle that is what's resonating with everybody. I think it's so timely for in both the media and sort of in life in general.
It sure is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a great model for young teenage girls growing up and just seeing what can be done and the power of putting stuff out there and making a difference. It's incredible how you can change the minds and hearts of people.
Totally. I mean,
and get money and support and all of that.
Before this film, I would never have even remotely considered myself an activist. Like, sure, I was always sort of passionate about things and I had things that I believed in, but didn't feel like I really had a voice or a platform to be able to do anything. And now seeing how far this film has gone, it's really sort of made me feel empowered, particularly to the point of now asking for things for other people.
And getting them too.
Yeah.
It's great. Do you have something in mind of what you might do next? I know you've got all these media things coming up and the global release, but do you have another little project bubbling underneath?
Yeah, I've actually just started shooting my second feature documentary.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank
Good
you.
for you. What's this?
It's a pretty different perspective, but it's another Hong Kong story. There is some new technology that's been developed out of Hong Kong PolyU University, which will for the first time enable textiles, fabrics to be fully recycled.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
Really, because there's a glut of clothes that are not being used and that are filling landfill, and it's almost like becoming a problem like plastic, isn't it?
Hugely, absolutely. And so they've developed this technology. They're building a plant out in Tai Po, and once it's up and running by the summer, it'll be able to process 3 tons of fabric a day. And it doesn't use any water. It doesn't use any harsh chemicals. And they're making the technology open source. That means that basically anywhere else in the world can build their own factory and do the same thing.
Oh, how cool is that? You're making a documentary about this.
I'm making a film that sort of centres around that and then explores Hong Kong's history as a textile hub, how that changed its economic impact of that manufacturing leaving Hong Kong.
How interesting.
Fast fashion, and then the environmental impact of fast fashion and how we've been dealing with it up to now in Hong Kong and how that's changing. You know, who are the innovators other than these guys within the city who are actually passionate enough to push this sort of technology?
Can you explain to me what fast fashion means?
Fast fashion is when a look that has been shown on a runway by a designer is suddenly copied and in your high street store at a fraction of the price 2 weeks later.
Right. and then everyone rushes out and buys it. It's a fad, and then it goes into their
you wear it once or twice.
Yeah,
you wash it, it shrinks because it's been made poorly, and then you chuck it in the bin.
Right.
And then from that bin, it goes straight mostly to landfill. Yeah.
Can clothing break down like plastic can't?
Most clothing these days are blends. This is sort of a part of the issue. So those blends, even if they have got an element of cotton or some sort of natural fibre in them, it also includes some sort of synthetic fabrics, and those...
The synthetic doesn't. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so interesting. It's a real environmental issue.
Totally.
Here you're going in a completely different activist area.
Which is crazy because it kind of circles around to the first content that I was hired to shoot in Hong Kong for the
Nepalese.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It does. Comes back to that kind of business and
sustainability content.
Yes, sustainability. How did you come up with that idea?
To be honest, I was actually approached.
Oh, great.
Which is even more exciting, to be hired for the first time by somebody else.
Rather than having to
put a project together myself.
And fund your own project and stuff. You've been recognised as a legit director and you're being hired. Congratulations. That's brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very proud.
That's amazing. As a director, what challenges do you face in your work?
Oh, lots. Putting together the right team for every project, because every project is completely different. Achieving the goal of the project within the financial constraints.
That must be one of the hardest ones, is it?
It's really hard, yeah.
Because you have so many factors, don't you? Like the weather or the light or whether people turn up on time, whether technology fails.
Yeah, all of that. And then also, how many days can you afford to shoot? How much do people cost? For me, I very much sort of believe in, paying people a decent wage. And it's hard in the film and entertainment industry. A lot of people constantly ask you for favors because nobody understands, oh, well, I could just go shoot it on my iPhone. Why do I need to pay you properly to do it? We tell those people to go shoot it on their iPhone and then come back and see it.
Afterwards. Absolutely.
People need to make a decent wage. And if you want to do something that is professional, that can be distributed on these platforms internationally, then it's got to be done a certain way. And there are certain costs and processes and procedures that are entailed in that.
When you were working on the Helper film, were you producing as well as directing?
Yeah.
And really doing everything location scale?
Yeah. I mean, I had a great producing partner, Tony Verb. He was most super active during the fundraising, and it was all of his knowledge that enabled us to do the Kickstarter campaign. But yeah, once we got in production, that was really my area of expertise. I had a small team with me, make sure that the logistics all happened.
Yeah.
But the hilarity was on that project that actually nobody involved at all had ever worked on a feature film.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. That's fantastic. But that just shows it's amazing. If you just have the right mindset and the right approach, you can put something together. You don't have to be like tops of the trees. Anybody can really step up and take a risk and step outside of your comfort zone.
Entirely that.
Yeah.
And we learned so much that is now such valuable knowledge. And I feel so empowered now because I'm like, yeah, I know how to produce a feature film from inception and financing all the way through distribution, which pretty valuable chunk of information to have.
Sounds to me like the work you did in the US, it was so bitsy and lots of different things that really set you up well for doing this, producing and directing, because you gathered so many skills. I worked in film a bit when I was young and did a degree in media. And I remember watching what everyone was doing. I was very young, but I was watching everybody in their roles and what they were doing. And if you really keep your eyes open, you can learn so much about what everything is doing and pick up skills beyond your actual role.
Totally. I think it's such a good thing as a director to understand what the people in post-production are going to be looking for and need from you. There's an expression everyone in post-production hates is when directors say, oh, don't worry about it, we'll fix it in post.
Yeah.
And that's horrible.
And then you end up reshooting.
Exactly.
And your actors are all somewhere else.
And then you ruin and blow your budget. So that's exactly the kind of stuff, right? Is picking it up and watching and learning and listening, because there's always someone around who's more experienced than you.
What about if you make a mistake? Is that hard for you? Or did you make any mistakes? I mean, you know what they are, but is that hard to cope with? You feel it's a learning experience?
Yeah. Every time you make a mistake, you learn something so valuable from it. Sure, you try to avoid them, but I think probably the learning process is so valuable that better to try it and mess it up than
not try at all.
Yeah.
Exactly. Do you feel like it's helpful not to be a perfectionist? Are you a perfectionist? Would you say?
I guess I am to some extent.
That's interesting because I'm not, and I find that quite helpful.
But I'm not most of the time. But when I'm working on a film, I am. because
that's interesting.
It's such a collaborative process, and it's going to be out there in its final form almost in perpetuity. And so many people are going to watch it and judge it and judge me. I remember at the premiere of The Helper a year ago, I was saying to people, it's like showing you my baby, like my daughter, and saying, is she pretty? Be honest.
It is. It's like giving birth, isn't it? I've been writing my book and it's the same thing. And I've had terrible anxiety. Did you feel anxious?
Gosh, I wanted to be sick.
During the process, and then the release. And
it's hard because you want to get feedback from people and you want to share it with people as you go. And it's important to get feedback from people. But at the same time, it's important to get feedback from the right people.
They've got to have your best interests at heart, don't they? It's got to be about loving you and wanting the best for you.
And understanding
your concept.
Storytelling and what have you. Because some people would watch a rough cut in the very early days and be like, oh, why are you not doing it like that? I'm like, well, that's your version of making the film. What about feedback on my version of making the film?
How did you cope with criticism, or is that hard?
Yeah, but it's part of the process, I think.
Have you built resilience to that as you've gone along?
I've definitely learned when to speak up and when to tell somebody.
See, I'm taking this all in.
Yeah.
I want this.
It's hard as a woman, right? I think we're brought up and programmed to want to make people happy and sort of keep all the water calm.
Yes, we are.
Speaking up and disagreeing with somebody particularly is something, particularly being British, is something that we're really programmed against. And I learned with this process that, occasionally there were people who were trying to push their opinion or agenda. And it conflicted and it went against what I wanted. And fortunately, I was confident enough in my ability and as a director by this point that I was like, no, that's not what I want. I know what I want and it's this. If I'm hiring you, you do that. I mean, I do listen to people's opinion and it is a collaborative process to some extent. But at the end of the day, it's also my vision.
Yeah, and the buck stops with you, doesn't it, at the end of the day? I'm really interested, when you're ready for release and it's done, were you still thinking, I could do this or I could do that? Or did you sit back and go, yep, it's ready. I'm completely happy with it?
Somewhere in between.
Okay.
I feel like we could have still been filming. And 2 years really, in terms of making a documentary, was actually a fairly short window of time.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some people I've spoken to have just been like, whoa.
Yes, actually, come to think of it, I just watched a documentary last night on Netflix. It was the evil genius about this woman who murdered, and interesting. But this guy had been filming for years. 15 years he'd been working, interviewing this woman and following her. And 2 years is quick, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do you balance motherhood and your job?
Mainly thanks to wonderful domestic workers.
The irony of it. And we're so lucky, aren't we, to be here and have these beautiful women.
Yeah, it's amazing. I wouldn't have been able to make the film if it hadn't been for that help. Being a mum and being a working mum is tricky. I was lucky when Jemima was she was born halfway through the making of the film.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh my God, what?
The Clock and Flap finale, that was sort of scheduled about 6 days before my due date. And I'd had such an uncomplicated pregnancy and generally so easy breezy that I was like, it'll be fine. But my blood pressure shot up about 4 days before Clock and Flap. And my doctor said, you're not leaving. You're checking into the hospital. You're not leaving until you've had a baby. And I was like, but I film.
I've got a film.
And he said, no, and I acquiesced.
Yeah.
As you do. Totally.
Baby is marginally more important than that other baby.
Exactly. And, I had a great team. I'd sort of briefed all of them, had shot lists, had everything planned, and ended up watching it from my hospital bed on the YouTube live stream of Clock and
great. Oh, that's cool. What do you think about the Hong Kong film scene? You involved in that?
It's a tricky one. I think Hong Kong had a real heyday, sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, right?
Yeah, back in the Jackie Chan movie time.
Totally. I think since the film industry in China has boomed, from my experience, it seems like everyone's making films directly targeted to sell to mainland China, which I understand. I mean, they're building a new cinema every hour or something over there. So the box office potential is huge. So that makes really, really good business sense. But coming at it from a non-Chinese perspective is much harder.
Right, yes. I'm sure it is much harder because you just don't have the language or the complete understanding of the culture, all of that.
Yeah,
or
entirely.
even what they're looking for.
No, exactly. And so from my personal perspective, I'm hoping that I'm positioning myself as sort of an international storyteller. particularly exploring these kind of female empowerment stories.
Brilliant. And others in your sort of niche in Hong Kong, or do you sort of stand alone?
A little bit. There's an amazing filmmaker called Emily Ting, who's sort of one of my mentors. And she made a film a couple of years ago called It's Already Tomorrow in Hong Kong. I don't know if you would have seen that. It's really beautiful. And she was an amazing mentor to me. She's between Los Angeles and Hong Kong. And when all the way through the film and when I got to distribution particularly, she gave me such great advice. She gave me such great contacts and introductions that have literally led to my film getting this international distribution.
That's fantastic.
So again, it's women empowering women.
Isn't that great? And it's a whole collaboration thing. And that's what I'm finding with this podcasting. There's only a few of us in Hong Kong, but we're all so supportive of each other. It's just fantastic. And we're giving each other tips and contacts and all that sort of thing. So it's great to see creativity growing in Hong Kong in podcasting.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it?
What attributes of yourself would you like to develop to continue your projects?
Keep watching lots of films, keep reading lots of books. I'm constantly inspired by very different things around me. Like I'm excited, I'm going to the Affordable Art Fair tomorrow night to like their sort of opening. And when I'm at that, I will constantly take photos because those sort of visual things inspire me. Reading books, sometimes I'll find someone on Instagram whose story is fascinating. There's a woman in Tibet that someone recently told me about, and I'm following her on Instagram now. And I think she's fascinating. So I guess it's that sort of like ongoing curiosity, learning from other filmmakers and the sort of stuff that they've made, and then just
building your creativity as well.
Yeah.
Creativity is so good for the soul, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It really is. It's great.
I feel incredibly lucky that I get to do this for a living.
I bet. I was wondering if you could be anything in the whole world, would you be doing what you're doing, or would you like to be something else, disregarding your talent?
No, I get to tell stories for a living. I'm like the eternal child. I get sometimes play pretend, right? I get to write, I get to conjure and create.
That's very cool, isn't it? And every day must be different, which is really nice.
Yeah. Some days less fun on the producing, paperwork, law, all of that stuff side. Sure. But then on another day when I'm on set and with my crew and we're figuring out a really cool shot, I'm just like, this is the best feeling on earth.
Awesome. That's great. What advice would you give to any young person who's thinking of moving into a career in any sort of creative pursuit?
Just start doing it. I think nowadays, with the advent of DSLR cameras that you can shoot film and GoPros, and everyone's got a laptop, everything's so accessible. Even now, I just worked on a project with some high school kids who are IB students.
Oh, cool. What were you doing?
Oh, it was a program for Mother's Choice.
Oh, great. That's an orphanage in Hong Kong.
Yeah, so they have a youth leadership program that they do with several local and international schools in Hong Kong as part of their international baccalaureate. They have to do like a service component. And so this group of young people choose kind of a project that they want to do each year. And a year and a half ago, they decided that they wanted to make a film as their project for the year. And it ended up the plan being that each different school was going to make a short film around the theme of choices that then going to stitch together. The idea being that it would be an educational kind of platform for Mother's Choice to be able to use to share through their sort of social media, and the schools to be able to use as a sort of conversation starter.
That's great.
Yeah, it was really cool. And so each of the schools,
did you come in sort of in an advisory role and teaching them a few skills and stuff?
I'd been on a panel with Alia, who's the CEO of Mother's Choice, who's amazing, sort of the year before. And I got this random email saying, we've got a bunch of kids who want to do a film project and you're the only film person we know in Hong Kong. Right. Can you come and help? And I did. And they were all really, really great. But particularly one young man blew me away.
Why? What was it about him that it was amazing?
His piece was just so talented, like the creativity, the skill level. At 16, 17, he made something that I was like, well, I'd be quite pleased to have made that myself.
Oh. So then did you hire him as an intern?
I put that out there, yes.
Great.
He might have better options, I'm not sure.
Oh, that's awesome. Joanna, if people want to see your Nepalese film, how can they access that? I want to watch that.
I think they're on my Vimeo page, my Joanna Bowers Vimeo, or they're also on my Cheeky Monkey Productions website. Actually, they're also on my Joanna Bowers website too.
Okay, brilliant. And what about The Helper? Do people have to just wait for that to be released internationally and then they can see it?
In Hong Kong right now, it's actually on Now TV pay-per-view. So if you've got cable, you can watch it as a download, but it's also scheduled. It's going to be screening on the Movie channel. So you can look out for it that way. Or in Hong Kong, we're also doing a series of corporate screenings, school screenings and community screenings right now.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Also, there's loads of ways that people can see your film.
Yeah, we're really, really getting it out there right now, and it's wonderful.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Joanna, for meeting with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm looking forward to seeing your next project. And congratulations on all you're doing. You're an inspiration to women all over the world.
Thank you so much.
Hong Kong Confidential is brought to you by Teresa's Turkish Towels. Teresa imports the finest 100% Turkish cotton towels that dry very quickly, making them perfect for Hong Kong's humid climate. Say goodbye to the traditional smelly and stinky towels and try the colourful and fresh selections available online or in Teresa's Wan Chai store. Use the promo code CONFIDENTIAL online or mention this podcast when you visit in person to receive $100 off your entire order when you order 2 or more towels. With 100% satisfaction guaranteed or your money back, the only thing you've got to lose are the musty smells that permeate traditional terry towels. Visit www.hkturkish.com in order to get the address and directions to Teresa's semi-hidden location. So that brings us to the end of another Hong Kong Confidential podcast. I'm Jules Hannaford. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you'll be with me again next week. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please can you go to iTunes to rate and review it. I would really appreciate your feedback. You can email me at jules@hongkongconfidential.net, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Hong Kong Confidential. If you'd like to hit me up on Twitter, it's at Jules Hannaford. I would love to hear from you.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.